Good morning. Today's topic of discussion is chelating agents. So we'll try to cover following topics in today's discussion. We'll start with introduction, followed by the mechanism of action, properties of ideal chelating agent. Then we'll go to the individual agents. Then we'll probably discuss a little bit about recent advances, a few of the important heavy metal poisoning, and then we'll come to conclusion. So let us start with the introduction on chelating agents. The toxicity of the heavy metals is attributed to their ability to form complexes with important biological radicals such as sulfhydryl radicals or the hydroxyl radicals. Even it can be happened with carboxyl radicals and the amino radicals. The inhibition of various enzymes leads to the toxic effects. Thus, affinity for sulfhydryl group leads to inhibition of vital sulfhydryl containing enzymes. Therefore, attempts were made to develop organic compounds which would have a high affinity for the metallic ions. Such drugs may combine with the metallic ions to produce relatively non-toxic, easily water-soluble complexes so that this can be eliminated via kidney. The process by which these organic compounds combined with the metals to form relatively stable non-ionized ring complexes is called chelation. The compounds being designated as chelating agents. So look at these pictures. If you can look at the top of right hand side, the eye, and you see a ring around this people, that is called cave ring. You can see these blood picture, which is probably indicating a certain kind of heavy metal poisoning. The foot, the teeth is being showing some kind of heavy metal poisoning, and at the end, if you look at this is one of your favorite noodle, and you know that this was being banned a few years back due to increase in the level of one of the important heavy metal. It's probably lead. So I don't want to mention the name of this noodle, but from your past memory you can recollect the name of this, and you can understand why these heavy metal poisoning as well as the chelating agents are so important in clinical practice. The term chill means claw. So the use of a chelating agent is to bind with a metal in the body to form a chelate so that the metal loses its toxic effect or physiological activity. And therefore, the metal is now unavailable for its toxic interaction with the functional group, mostly the enzymes which I mentioned before, the groups like sulfhydryl, carboxyl, amino groups, or with the other proteins and nucleophiles and membranes. So this is the structural way of showing you how a copper molecule is being forming a complex with a certain kind of chelating agents. The name of the chelating agents will be mentioned later on, but one is already mentioned here, which is EDTA. Beside these, there are some drugs like British antileucite, which is also known as dimercaprol. So these are basically the agents which are commonly used in different heavy metal poisoning. The heavy metals usually combines with one or more reactive group, that is the ligands, maybe the oxide or the nitrogen or the sulfur. It donate a pair of electrons, so itself it's oxidized, and it is basically reducing the other substance. So this oxidation reduction process is going on, and hence there is hampering in the physiological function. Enzyme inhibition occurs, as well as it will lead to oxidative stress. The chelating agents, they will form complexes with the heavy metals. and it has few of the characteristic features. The first thing is the complex is going to be stable, and it is definitely going to be non-toxic. It is going to be water soluble, that means polar, and this non-toxic compound will be easily excreted via urine, so that we can get rid of these heavy metal poisonings with the help of these drugs. And mostly you have to remember the name of 4 drugs. First one is dimercaprol or British antilucide. The second one is penicillamine, which was shown as a to treat a case of Wilson's disease, where KF ring is seen in the eyes. So that is for copper poisoning. For iron poisoning, usually the injectable agent is desferrioxamine and the oral agent is deferiprone, and EDTA, which is mostly used for lead poisoning or even in case of arsenic poisoning. So the factors which are affecting actions are the metals excretion, which is a desirable effect, and redistribution of some of the metals to other vital organs, which may lead to some kind of undesirable effect. So we already mentioned the name of dimercaprol or British antilucide, which is basically redistributes mercury and arsenic to the brain, while also enhancing urinary mercury and arsenic excretion. The tendency to redistribute cadmium to the kidney and increase nephrotoxicity has negated their therapeutic value in cadmium intoxication. In addition to removing the target metal, some chelating agents may enhance excretion of essential cations such as zinc in the case of calcium EDTA and DTPA, and zinc and copper both in case of succimer. So the factors affecting actions are: the longer the half-life of a metal in a particular organ, the less effectively it will be removed by chelation. The late chelation with calcium EDTA, the metal is more effectively removed from the soft tissues than it's going to be removed from bone. The capacity of chelating agents to prevent or to reduce the adverse effect of toxic metals is usually greatest when administered very soon after the acute metal exposure. So if you are starting your treatment a little bit late, probably these drugs are not going to be that effective. So these drugs are also used in acute poisoning as well as in case of chronic poisoning. So those factors which are affecting the actions are relative affinity of the chelator to the heavy metal, its distribution of the chelator in the body, its capacity to mobilize the complex, its half-life of the heavy metal, and the duration after which the exposure happens. So when you are actually giving this treatment to your patients. So it is very difficult to find an ideal chelating agent, but the ideal characteristics are highly water soluble, resistant to biotransformation, its ability to reach sites of metal storage, it may form non-toxic complexes with heavy metal, it retain activity at pH of body fluids, it's ready for excretion of the chelate compound, and the greater affinity for heavy metal than for endogenous ligand. Otherwise, it may form a complex inside your body. So these are the common individual agents: EDTA, dimercaprol or British antilucide, succimer, unithiol, triantine, which is basically a penicillamine-like thing used in case of Wilson's disease, penicillamine, deferiprone, deferiprone. So these are the common, which last two are used in iron poisoning. So these are common agents which are used in clinical practice. Let us start with the first one, which is EDTA. It's a highly polar ionic compound, and this one is basically forming metallic many divalent and trivalent metallic ions, and their therapeutic application is related to their chelating properties. So the calcium disodium and the disodium salts of EDTA forms stable and highly water soluble complexes. Only the calcium salts are useful in toxicity of lead, zinc, even in arsenic, manganese. Highly successful in lead poisoning because of capacity of lead to displace calcium from EDTA, and it chelates extracellular metal ions much more effectively than intracellular ions. So this is the way it functions. M stands for the lead is there already, and you can symbolically present it as M or N. So it means that it's forming the chelating compound with lead. Now, salts are poorly absorbed from the GI tract. It's given via injectable route, IV or IM. The latter is very painful. They are excreted almost completely within 24 hours, both by glomerular filtration and tubular secretion. The adverse drug reactions which is happening are basically thrombophlebitis and nausea, diarrhea, toxic nephrosis, oliguria, and renal failure. The adverse drug reactions which we may encounter are hypocalcemic tetany, malaise. It may affect kidney, especially proximal convoluted tubule. This may cause nausea, diarrhea, toxic nephrosis, oliguria. As I said, the renal failure. Renal damage has been attributed to the free metallic ion released as a result of the dissociation of the metal chelate complex. The febrile reaction is common. Vomiting, nausea, and histamine-like reaction with rhinorrhea, lacrimation, dermatitis are pretty common with this kind of drug. Normally, the calcium disodium editate and disodium editate injections. These are two available forms. These are not useful in mercury poisoning because mercury tightly bound to sulfhydryl groups and sequestered in body compartment, not penetrated by EDTA. Hence, it is not that effective in mercury poisoning, despite earlier belief proved to be ineffective in the treatment of atherosclerosis. That is the limitation of EDTA. Main therapeutic use is lying in the lead poisoning, and it is extremely useful in both acute and chronic lead poisoning. In acute lead poisoning, the agent is given by slow IV infusion in the dose of 40 mg per kg in two divided doses, whereas the salt can also be used as a diagnostic test for lead poisoning. Divided dose, usually in 3 doses, administered 20% solution by deep intramuscular injection with 1.5% procaine. So currently there is no conclusive evidence that repeated IV infusion of EDTA is beneficial in any form of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Hence, one should not use this in case of as a preventive therapy or prophylactic therapy in those cases. BAL, the full, it's an abbreviation of the term British anti-leucite, and the other name of the same drug is dimercaprol. It was synthesized by Stockton and Thomson during World War II to ensure protection against poisoning by arsenical gases such as leucite, and chemically it is the diethyl having 2 sulfhydryl groups. It is used in the poisoning by arsenic, oily fluid, pungent odor, and given as intramuscular injection, which is extremely painful. Dimercaprol forms poorly dissociable complexes with arsenic and mercury. It is in case of mercury and cadmium, this complex further reacts with another molecule of dimercaprol to form a still more stable inactive complex. Even though this dimercaprol metal complexes are poorly dissociable, some amount of dissociation does occur in vivo, causing the release of toxic metal in the active form. So we have to overcome this drawback, and for that dosage schedule is adjusted in such a way that in excess of free drug is always present in the body to bind the free metal released as a result of dissociation. This fails to protect or reactivate the sulfhydryl enzyme if administered late or in the presence of overwhelming amount of the metal. This drug is basically FDA approved single agent treatment acute poisoning of arsenic, and also in case of inorganic mercury. The adverse drug reactions are quite common. Injection is painful, it causes sterile abscess, drug fever, it forms a metal complex, dissociate more readily in an acidic medium. The urine therefore should be made alkaline during dimercaprol therapy to protect the kidneys from the toxic effects of the release free metal. And it also shown the adverse drug reactions like nausea, vomiting, headache, burning sensation in the mouth and eyes, lacrimation, muscle pain. So these are common, and it may lead to anginal pain and tachycardia and hypertension. The use is contraindicated in the presence of hepatic damage and in iron poisoning, as in the form of toxic complex with iron. So dimercaprol is contraindicated in iron poisoning. The preparations are available in different forms, and the injectable forms are used in acute poisoning due to arsenic, mercury, gold, in severe cases of arsenical and gold poisoning, in acute mercury poisoning, and also in lead poisoning. There are water soluble analogues of dimercaprol available. One is Unithal, another one is Saxima. These water soluble analog of dimercaprol is Saxima is effective orally. After absorption, it is biotransformed to a mixed disulfide with cysteine. It is an effective and better tolerated chelator of lead, arsenic, cadmium and mercury. And usually the adverse effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of appetite and skin loss. It is not only recommended for arsenic poisoning, it is also recommended in case of lead poisoning in children. Whereas Unithal is given at a dose of 3 to 5 milligram per kg, slow intravenous route. It has a lesser adverse drug reaction than dimercaprol, and it may cause urticaria, rashes and Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Let us come to the next drug known as penicillamine, which is basically a degraded product of penicillin, and it is available in two forms, D-penicillamine and L-penicillamine. The D-penicillamine form is usually used in clinical practice. It is readily absorbed from the gut and is resistant to metabolic degradation. It is less toxic than the D-penicillamine is less toxic than the L-isomer. So the D-penicillamine is very commonly used. It forms a water-soluble complex with copper, mercury and lead ions, and thus facilitates their excretion in urine. Like dimercaprol, it inhibits a number of enzymes which include transaminase, desulfohydrase, which have one of these metals as a prosthetic group. The adverse reactions are very common. It's a toxic drug. It may lead to general toxicity, hematological toxicity, renal toxicity and autoimmune syndrome. Mostly it is used therapeutically in case of Wilson's disease, which lead to hepatolenticular degeneration, and which is characterized by KF ring around the cornea, whereas the copper and arsenic and gold poisoning, oral Saxima is preferred, and it is also used in cystinuria. But these previously penicillamine was prescribed in rheumatoid arthritis. Nowadays it is not used anymore. It was also used in amyloidosis, systemic amyloidosis. The acetyl D-penicillamine, this drug basically a less toxic one, a weaker chelating agent than D-penicillamine, and it has been shown to be particularly effective in mercury poisoning. And there is newer drug that is called Triantine. So this is Wilson's disease where you will mostly prescribe triantine, and triantine is given in doses of 400 to 800 milligram thrice daily on empty stomach. It is as effective as penicillamine in reversing these neurological symptoms. It appears to be less toxic than penicillamine. That is the advantage, and that is the reason why it is scoring over penicillamine. And it may cause less iron deficiency. Wilson's disease is basically a rare hereditary disease of abnormal copper metabolism characterized by degenerative changes in the basal ganglia and cirrhosis of the liver. The copper content of the liver, brain, kidney, and other tissues is grossly increased. The total serum copper and ceruloplasmin copper content are reduced, and the urinary excretion of copper is enhanced. And the ring which I mentioned, the KF ring, the full form of this is Kayser-Fleischer ring. The Kayser-Fleischer ring is showing brownish pigmented ring at the corneal margin, and is a diagnostic of this condition. And as I mentioned before, the treatment is directed towards reducing the total body copper. This is achieved by administration of zinc acetate plus triantine. Triantine can chelate zinc. They are administered at least 1 hour apart, and this therapy is given in conjunction with a high protein, low copper diet with potassium disulfide. The latter precipitates dietary copper and thereby reduces its absorption. So foods rich in copper should be avoided. So this is a ring which is basically showing the characteristic feature of Wilson's disease, and the arrow is basically showing the way this ring is being projected over here. So this is a characteristic of Wilson's disease. It is contraindicated in pregnancy, in renal insufficiency, and bone marrow failure. And as I mentioned, that the adverse drug reactions are pretty common with all these drugs: rash, urticaria, maculopapular lesions, drug fever, and it may lead to aplastic anemia, proteinuria, and hematuria. So chance of nephrotoxicity and as well as bone marrow toxicity is quite common with these kind of chelatic agents. So these are not very safe drugs. So triantine is already been mentioned, and lastly we are coming to iron poisoning, and it's mostly happening due to transfusional iron overload. Normally the iron absorption and the loss are balanced in approximately 1 milligram per day. 1 unit of blood contains 200 to 250 milligram of iron, and chronic transfusion is basically dependent patients receiving 2 to 4 units of blood per month. You will see these kind of patients in case of thalassemia. So this iron overload is pretty common in case of thalassemic patients. Now this one is basically showing that excess of iron 1 gram per month may lead to accumulation and repeated infusion. So signs of iron overload is there. It is between 10 to 20 transfusions, and which is pretty common with the thalassemic patients, even with patients suffering from hemophilia. Iron, high iron means that the transferrin is saturated, and the free iron in the serum will be allocated by the body in different organs and joints. And therefore, this reaction you have read in biochemistry, and you know that this will ultimately lead to the production of free radicals. The feature is characterized by the organ involvement. Mostly the liver is involved, and 95% of symptomatic cases, hepatomegaly, macronodular, or even the micronodular cirrhosis are quite common with this kind of overload in iron problem. There are some diseases like hemosiderosis. You see this iron overload is happening. The skin pigmentation, metallic or slate gray hue, the bone skin, and it may be associated with diabetes mellitus, and hence the combination of the two or the characteristics of the disease will lead to damage of the pancreas, especially the islet of pancreas. So the iron overload will lead to cardiac involvement, congestive cardiac failure, and sudden death due to cardiac arrhythmia, arthropathy, hypogonadism. And the main treatment of this iron overload is going to be phlebotomy, and iron removal is best accomplished by weekly or twice weekly phlebotomy of 500 ml of blood. Less expensive, it is more convenient, and the blood taken can be used as blood donations. So phlebotomy is only dangerous when it is associated with severe anemia, and then in that case you have to select a chelating agent. These are common iron chelators, which includes desferrioxamide, deferriprone, and deferricerox. Deferriprone is a bidentate chelator. It's given by injectable route, 3 molecules, each with 2 iron binding sites for the 6 coordination sites of iron, whereas sferrioxamine is a hexadentate chelator binding iron in a 1:1 ratio. And the latest one, deferraracerox, is a tridentate chelator, requires 2 molecules for iron coordination. Mostly we are using injectable desferrioxamine or oral deferriprone to treat a case of iron overload. In general, hexadentate chelators form the most stable iron chelate complexes, and bidentate chelators the basically are the least stable. So this is the way this complex is being formed. Desferrioxamine is basically obtained from Streptomyces pilosus. It removes iron from the hemosiderin, ferritin, but not from hemoglobin or cytochromes. It is not absorbed orally, and hence it is desferrioxamine is given by intramuscular or intravenous route. In chronic cases, the dose is 0.5 to 1 gram per day. Chance of allergic reactions is very high, especially the anaphylactoid reaction or anaphylaxis. So you have to keep steroid, glucocorticoid, adrenaline, and antihistaminic like diphenhydramine in your hand to tackle that anaphylactic shock or anaphylactoid reaction. Deferriprone is a orally effective iron chelator, and the complex is excreted in bile, and it is approved for oral treatment of iron overload caused by blood transfusion in patients of thalassemia and myelodysplastic syndrome. The advantages of giving deferriprone is orally active, so the patient compliance is better, the safety profile well established, enhanced removal of cardiac iron, and it may be combined with deferrioxamine or desferrioxamine, whereas disadvantages are risk of agranulocytosis and may not achieve negative iron balance in all patients at 75 mg per kg per day. This is a pictorial presentation of lead poisoning. It can be happen from paints, from the containers, pipes, the canned foods, automobile batteries, and it will affect your CNS, blood, kidney, the reproductive organs, and gastrointestinal tract. These are the common things. The clinical problems happen with the lead poisoning, encephalopathy in case of adult with frank anemia at a particular level, then the hemoglobin synthesis, then it will lead at a lower level the peripheral neuropathy. It will may affect the erythrocyte protoporphyrin in male and female patient, whereas in children there are chances of encephalopathy, neuropathy, anemia, colic, as well as death at a high level. So these are the drugs by which you will treat lead poisoning. Already I have discussed the name of EDTA. Even you can use dimercaprol and succimer. This is an example of or the manifestation of mercury poisoning. Well, you see the teeth are involved. This is basically the taken from Minamata tragedy. This diagnosis on urine mercury level is characteristic of this poisoning. Now look at these effects. The acute effects are pneumonitis, erythema, nephrotic syndrome, the peripheral neuropathy. So higher level will give you the more complicated things. In case of, air related toxicity, when the lungs are involved, then the pneumonitis will happen. And at a lower level, it will lead to the tremor frequency. That means the nervous system is involved, then your kidneys are also going to be involved. So higher the level, it will lead to toxicity to the respiratory system, and comparatively at the lower level, it will lead to toxicity at the level of uh, nervous system as well as kidney. This is an example of mercury poisoning. You see the features. The initial thing is maculopapular eruptions affecting your palm and sole. Here the patient is probably uh, having a more severe variety of arsenic poisoning, and probably this poisoning is happening due to your probably the person is getting it from water. So drinking water, if the drinking water is having a high arsenic level, then it will lead to this kind of problems. The treatment, again coming back to the dimercaprol or beta-centraleucide, succimer, and even the penicillamine can be combined with dimercaprol. These are common causes which are happening due to transfusional iron overload. So iron poisoning is mostly happening when blood transfusion is given. In case of beta thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, aplastic anemia, myelodysplastic syndrome, and some chronic anemias like Fanconi anemia and Blackfan diamond anemia, that is a red cell aplasia. The reason lying in the fact that it will affect the hydroxyl radical, is highly active and attacks the lipids, protein and DNA, the formation of peroxides of these molecules, and interact with other molecules to form crosslinks. These crosslink molecules ultimately perform their normal functions either poorly or it is almost ineffective. We have mentioned phlebotomy, and this one is the basic role of chelators like deferriprone and desferrioxamine. They protect the cells from iron mediated toxicity in two ways: removal of the excessive iron. Once the toxic iron is removed, the body's repair mechanism can correct damage, and the neutralization of free iron. It means a tight binding of chelators to iron blocks the iron's ability to catalyze redox reactions. So these are the two main ways by which the iron chelators are protecting your body from acute iron poisoning. So I'm concluding my presentation with the fact that chelation has its pros and cons, that means the benefits and drawbacks. The benefits are it's effective against acute poisoning. It can form non-toxic complexes. It may remove metal from soft tissues. Oral therapies are available in various forms. Whereas the drawbacks are the redistribution of toxic metal, maybe the essential metal loss, no removal of metal from intercellular sites, hepatotoxicity and nephrotoxicity, which are the common drawbacks or adverse drug reactions of these agents. Then comes anaphylactoid reactions, which may happen with the drug like desferrioxamine or penicillamine, the poor clinical recovery, poor oxidant effects, and headache and nausea. So with this and the references I have taken, I am showing you the way these kind of injectable preparations are given. I'm concluding my presentation, and thank you so much for your patient hearing. Thank you once more.